first item of business is the appointment of chair and vice chair. And with the committee's consent, we're going to deal with these appointments together. And so I would like to, may I have a motion to nominate myself, Erin Cerenzia, as chair for the year 2022, and Brian North as vice chair for the year 2022 for the Community Recognition Review Advisory Committee. And if you can please.
So something we said, she left us.
Well, she must have dropped off. Oh, there she is. She's back. Welcome back.
I'm so sorry. Off to a really great start. I hit the leave meeting instead of got it, we're recording button. So I apologize for that. So we were making, may I have a motion to nominate myself, Erin Cerenzia, as chair and Brian North as vice chair for the remainder of the 2022 term. And I was just saying, if you could either raise your hand or in Joanne's case, because we can't see you, if someone would like to move this. So Diane has made this motion and Joanne has seconded the motion. And so I'll now call the vote. All those in favor, if you can raise your hand or say aye. And aye. There are none opposed, so that carries. Thank you. Okay. So I will move to our agenda now, and we are going to begin our meeting with a land acknowledgement. We'd like to start by acknowledging that the land on which we live and work is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, whose presence here continues to this day. Aurora is part of the treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties First Nations. We acknowledge and thank them for sharing this land with us. A shared understanding of how the rich cultural heritage that has existed for centuries and how our collective past brought us to where we are today will help us walk together into a better future. Okay, item number 3, we will now go into the approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated by Legislative Services? Thank you. That was moved by Paul, and I saw Elaine has seconded that. Thank you both. I'll now call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Aye. Thank you. And there are none opposed. So the agenda is approved, and that carries as well. Now bear with me because you know I can never pronounce this word properly. Are there, item number 4, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? And I am not seeing or hearing any. Perfect. So we'll carry on to item number 5, which is the receipt of the minutes. May I please have a motion to receive the meeting minutes of February 1st, 2021? And I saw Diane's hand first. So thank you, Diane has moved. And Joanne has seconded. Thank you. I will call the vote. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm supposed to pause and ask if there are any questions related to the minutes before we vote. Diane, question, or are you voting? Okay. All right. Now I will now call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye. Aye. And there are none opposed again, so that is carried as well. We do not have any delegations, number 6. So this brings us down to number 7, matters for consideration. So our first item is 7.1, roundtable discussion regarding the 2022 awards event, Citizen of the Year reception. May I have a mover and a seconder to put this item on the floor for discussion? So I've got Brian as our mover and Elaine as our seconder. Thank you very much. And we are now up for discussion. Staff, aka the wonderful Shelley Ware, our fearless leader. Can we turn it over to you, Shelley?
Thank you. For this item, we've spoken previously with the unfortunate that Eric McCartney and Tom Connors didn't get a true Community Recognition Awards experience. And we are planning to have the Citizen of the Year reception, which happens prior to the ceremony happening. So for this time, I was hoping that we could brainstorm or come up with additional ideas as to how we could enhance that experience or make it like normally the Citizen of the Year is for everyone to reconnect, but I think this year it should take a slightly different term in recognizing Eric and Tom. And in visualizing this, I was envisioning like a table dedicated to photos of Eric, possibly his award, same with Tom, as well as both of them being there. And then as well, with our mayor being there, I know members of council will be there as well. But is there anything else that we can do? Because we can never make up for that lost time. We can only give a genuine effort to try to make it special.
Brian, go ahead.
This is.
I was wondering, could we?
Sorry,
could
hang
we
on.
do
So we'll
the-
go to Brian and then Paul. Thank you.
Sorry. Could we do it like have the mayor actually speak about them before he actually introduces this year's Citizen of the Year? Speak to them and have them come up and give them something. I mean, that might be a way of making them feel important. I know you've given them the award, but is there a way the mayor could speak about both of them? First, start with Tom and the fact that COVID hit during this time, but we want to recognize them and recognize them for a photo shoot, maybe with Brock taking a picture, and then do the same for Eric, and then get into do it at the end, and then get into the this year's award recipient. Just a suggestion.
That sounds good to me, Brian, from the point of view that you're giving them the opportunity to be recognized. And then we follow along with the others. So it would be like two different ceremonies, and that makes it clear to me. I think it would be a good thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
So I'll just in response to Brian, we've got Joanne and Elaine agreeing.
If there's time.
Justin, you're nodding as well. And I'm in agreement as well. And I do want to give Paul the opportunity to share his thoughts. So Paul,
yeah, that's what I was going to say. If you have like a little table or something set up ahead of time, and then if you maybe start this thing off, just going back a couple of years and saying a few words like Brian was saying, I think that would be very nice.
Shelley, does that work for you from a logistics perspective?
Yes, and fortunately, both of them have already RSVP'd to attending the Citizen of the Year ceremony prior to the ceremony, which means they're there for the evening of as well. And last year, for the first time, we did a Citizen of the Year video or montage where we looked back over all the photos that we could. That's going to be edited and updated because obviously last year it didn't have Eric, but it would have had Tom. And we also did a, post-memorial. We also acknowledged which previous Citizens of the Year had passed away. So we're editing that footage because those that passed away last year wouldn't be re-announced this year. But I wondered if anyone knew of any that did pass away. To my knowledge, no one has since May of 2021.
Okay. Not seeing or hearing any response to that one, which is great. We're happy to have our Citizens of the Year still in good health with us.
And then we did have, I was hoping to discuss food, which impacts the next item as well as this item. With the Citizen of the Year reception happening at 5:30, which is kind of the hungry hour, I did want to propose that we do things slightly reverse, where we would have light sandwiches at that function, but for the post-ceremony, go more with a dessert flair. And Aaron, I defer to you whether we get into this now or whether we go into the next item for this.
I think, why don't we keep it in the next item for discussion? I think it makes more sense there, Shelley. Thank you. So
I
then,
think we're good for that.
okay, perfect. So are there any further comments or questions again on the item here, Citizen of the Year reception from the committee? I'm seeing heads shaking, and Joanne just confirming you are okay.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, great. So I will now call the vote. And I'm sorry, Linda, do we need to make any other motion here other than to vote?
No, just that that the comments that you've made will be received and referred to staff for further consideration.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate you clarifying. So may I please, sorry, we've had the motion on the table. Again, this is now that the comments that we've made are being referred back to staff for consideration. All those in favor, you may raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And then there are none opposed, so that carries. Thank you. So now we will go into item 7.2, which is our roundtable discussion regarding the 2022 awards event, Community Recognition Awards Ceremony. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the item on the floor for discussion? So Diane has moved and Paul has seconded. Thank you. So the Community Recognition Review Advisory Committee comments regarding the 2022 awards event, Community Recognition Awards Ceremony, be received and referred to staff for consideration and further action as appropriate. Staff, Shelley, would you like to speak to this item now? Thank you.
So previously we had Food in Motion sponsor the event. They have changed their business model. And so we were going to try to go with a half sponsorship, as well as then to provide winners with gift certificates to Food in Motion. However, that isn't going to work. They've changed their model to catering to larger events for a variety of reasons. So we have that. So they have provided us with a quote to provide food for the ceremony, which isn't necessarily going to work out. We are hopefully going to be hearing back from Symposia by Wednesday of this week. It may not be as we would like that as well. So having said that, for this year only, we may need to fund a bit more out of the base budget for the food component. And having said that, I wanted to suggest that we did light sandwiches for the Citizen of the Year reception, only because of the hour that it is at. And if we are asking you to come at 5:30 and you might not be walking out of town hall till 8:30, and you wouldn't really bring snacks with you to this kind of venue, I wanted to propose that. But then after the ceremony, traditionally we've gone back up to the Skylight Gallery where there's been a cake cutting. There's wine, it's licensed, but more so of a dessert flair, which will be a slightly different tone than it was before. It's also been 2 years, so not many people may remember how it was back then. And I think when you overall look at the ceremony, it's about us coming together as well in celebration of those being recognized. So I kind of felt less pressure that if the food isn't the same, that's going to be okay as well. But how do you feel?
I like it. It sounds good to me.
You're getting a lot of heads nodding. Just want to give Joanne on the phone.
Yes, I'm fine.
It makes sense to me as well, Shelley.
And then we will still be, if you recall, we're ordering up the signage to do the slat wall system up in the Skylight Gallery. So that'll all be done. It's been a while since we've done that, so it's going to be exciting to see the award winners up there. And I didn't know if perhaps if the mayor had any updates that he wanted to share. If you had any input for the ceremony up top.
Is this where you want me to talk about the new award?
If you had any updates you wanted to provide.
Okay. All right. So I know we've discussed I'd say over the last 4 years or 3 years, well, I guess 4, looking at possibly introducing a new award that would be given out once a term, which is the Lifetime Achievement Award. I'm not sure if everyone remembers having those discussions where we kind of threw it out there. I guess I've made a decision that we'll go ahead with that. That award would come out of the mayor's office, similar to the Citizen of the Year. The group that voted on the Citizen Year have already voted on who would be the first recipient, and would be the first one, I guess, and the only one for this term, as we would do it once every term. So once every 4 years, we will give out the Lifetime Achievement Award. We've looked at going with I guess it's kind of like a silver platter, Shelley, just so everyone knows. It's like a silver platter that will, have their name engraved on it, town crest, everything like that. And so and we still haven't 100% decided whether we are going to let the person know ahead of time or not. That part hasn't been decided yet, but it's like I said, it's a new award. I know that we've all talked about it, but we will be introducing it. We figured it was a good time to do it as it's the last year, and we figured every term last year you give out the award. So I guess that's the update.
So all of you be prepared. It could be you because you are all incredible Aurora volunteers.
If anyone has any questions or thoughts, Jake, by all means, please feel free to ask.
Diane, go ahead.
Can a former citizen of the year win this lifetime award?
We are still, to be honest with you, we're still working out 100% the details as far as I guess like the detailed criteria. There's some thought that because I agree. I mean, we looked at it from the perspectives that if can a citizen of the year, previous citizen of the year win it? I think so. But ultimately, I think that you can't. I think that ultimately we would look at maybe in the same year, the person can't get both. But I think a past citizen of the year could get a lifetime achievement. I think the biggest criteria for lifetime achievement is going to be the amount of years that they will have to have been a resident of the community.
Brian, I saw your hand.
I have more of a question of will that person have an opportunity to become Citizen of the Year in the future rather than Citizen of the Year? I think once you've won the Citizen of the Year, I think, that's been fabulous. It just, once they get this recognition, will they still be able to get the recognition in the future, or is that same as the Citizen of the Year? Once you've won, you can't win again.
No, because I think that they're two different awards, Brian. I think that ultimately, I think the model we're following is similar to the Academy Awards. When they give out the Lifetime Achievement Award. So ultimately, that person would not they would be banned from winning an Academy Award if they happen to do a great movie that in a year they'd be up for that Oscar, right? So I would look at it the same way, is that if they happen to have a year after that where they do some phenomenal stuff and they get nominated for Citizen of the Year, if the committee believes that they're worthy and they're the person that should be named Citizen of the Year, then that's who would get named, regardless of what they've done in the past. Yeah.
Could it be something instead of community leadership? Could it be a key to the town? I think we've only ever given one out before that I remember. Just a suggestion. I'm just coming up with ideas because people have done a lot for the community, and I still believe once you won Citizen of the Year, you shouldn't be able to win something else, but that's my own thought.
Okay. Well, I mean, as we, I guess, obviously we'll create. There'll be some more. We're finishing, like I said, we're finalizing the detail. I guess terms of how the award will be ultimately. The criteria involved in all of it. But I think that we still have. I guess you could say we still have 4 years to make sure that we have it all right? Because we won't be giving out another one for another 4 years. So I think that if we get like the higher details finalized, which I think which is what we have, is that it's only going to be given out once every 4 years. I think we have some time to settle on some of the other smaller details.
And if I could just add, I think part of that criteria is maybe explaining the selections process. So someone won't be able to say, hey, I didn't see that on the award nomination form this year.
So when we are at the ceremony this year, so as I'm giving out the award, I will be explaining the criteria and how it came about and how they were selected. So I will make mention of that. I mean, I think that though through the conversations that we've all had, and if anyone remembers when we were discussing, possibly creating this award, is that there was always a bit of a struggle. And even when I sit down in the discussions with the committee that picks the Citizen of the Year, and there's always that struggle of, are we looking at this from someone that their lifetime body of work, and are we awarding a Citizen of the Year on that, or are we awarding the Citizen of the Year based on what they did this year? And so there was that struggle, right? Because sometimes you look at someone, you're overwhelmed by what they've done in a lifetime, and you're like, well, they really deserve it. But you're like, but this person did so much this year, and so we've always been struggling with that, and so that's how this kind of evolved, and it kind of came to this. And I think this year was, I guess I'll say it was a great example of the struggle within the group of who to pick. And so that's why it ultimately led to, well, this is a great time to introduce it and move forward with this award. And since the last year, everyone thought it was a good idea. And I'll be honest with you, I stayed out of it, and the group picked it, and the group decided to move forward with it.
Are there any other questions or comments at this point? Or Shelley, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on?
Only that this is our last time touching base together collectively as a group going into the ceremony. Just if anyone had any further feedback, suggestions, or ideas, it also doesn't have to be presented in this forum. I'm certainly reachable. Email and phone, but if there's anything that you want to see added to the ceremony, obviously we always want to try to improve it from the previous year. So if anything has anything, speak now, or certainly reach out to me.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for the discussion. If there are no further comments, I will now call the vote. So all those in favor, you may raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And there are none opposed, so that carries. Okay, next up is item 7.3. This is our roundtable discussion regarding the 2022 selection process review. May I have a mover and a seconder to put this item on the floor for discussion? Brian has moved.
Joanne.
And Diane has seconded. Thank you. So that the Community Recognition Review Advisory Committee comments regarding the 2022 selection process review be received and referred to staff for consideration and further action as appropriate. Shelley, would you like to speak to this?
I love charts, so I wanted to share my screen. So I wanted you to see anecdotally, if I can share, how the nominations came in. With the number of nominations this year, you can see by our chart in 2021, we had 54 nominations, and in 2020, we had 49. This year, we had 80, which is pretty impressive. So the change between 2022 and 2021 is actually a 48% increase and an 80% increase between 2022 and 2020. And with regards to the number of nominations per category, I liked putting together this visual. Every single category increased except for the Youth Volunteer, Arts and Culture, and Inclusivity Award. However, overall, given there was a high quality of award nominations all across the board, there's nothing to note of concern or question. But I just wanted to show you guys this visual because I just think it's neat in the direction and the trajectory that this is going into. Now, with this coming down to being the last year of the term for this committee, I think for the past few years, this selection, unique questions have always come up on the day of selection. It has always been a challenge coming down to choosing the chosen candidate for that year due to the quality of submissions. But before this committee has done its term, at our next meeting, I think we do need to look at each category. There's been increases, determine relevance, whether there's any awards missing, as well as to review some of the questions asked within each category. I know with some of you guys were nominators, and so you felt firsthand what it was like answering the questions. So you see it from a different perspective. As well, wanted to propose collectively, as we have discussed previously, that we come up with some form of evaluation matrix that starts the conversation and helps in determining the results. Not that the matrix will necessarily make the base decision, but that we move towards that type of, or utilizing those kind of tools so that perhaps at the next time we meet post-ceremony, that staff have a draft matrix, because it would be nice to take either some nominations from this year or even 2019 and just use the matrix live and see if it works, if it's where we want it to be, whether it mirrors the results that we had. So I did want to put that out there for discussion.
I think it's a great idea.
I agree. I think it's really important. No other comments or thoughts? Brian, go ahead.
If we were to do the matrix, which I think is a great form of scoring thing, there should maybe something at the bottom saying it could be overridden if the whole committee looks at something and say, you know, even though the person's, I'm going to use one of the matrix as being a citizen of Aurora for a number of years or whatever, because points always add up doesn't necessarily always mean they should be the winners. So somehow in that, my only suggestion would be allow it to have the opportunity, or the committee at the time, as I say, it won't be this committee anyway, to override it. I mean, it's more of a matrix to help decide who, not to make the decision of who. Just my thought.
I just want to, Shelley has her hand raised, and then I also want to acknowledge that Elaine has put a comment in the chat. So Shelley, did you want to respond to Brian first, and then Elaine will go to you?
So I do agree with you, Brian. I think the matrix is simply a tool to help guide discussion. I think there are other evaluating tools that I would like to suggest at our next meeting to further complement this. When we do notify people whether they won or whether they didn't, the questions they ask me are almost as hard as the questions you're answering in the selection process. So the matrix is one evaluating tool. There's also another tool I want to suggest, a motivator one. And those, again, just lead up to how collectively the group will deal with the results. So simply a tool to enhance and maybe provide a bit more clarity, but not to be the deciding factor, especially if you have two candidates that both have a score of 71. Well, what does 71 mean? We have to put in an evaluation criteria into interpreting the results as well.
Well, I think it's important that you have the human factor to it too, right? So, you got to mull it over and then make a decision. So in these kind of things, I found that that's what we always did in the end.
Elaine, did you want to share your comment?
Excuse me. No, I think Shelley covered what my concern was. That, yeah, sorry, she covered it. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other comments related to this topic that anyone wants to bring up at this point, or questions for Shelley? Brian, go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is the time or if this, we've talked about the matrix and I love it as a tool, fabulous. But also on the nomination form, question number 2 is almost redundant. If people, and just while we're talking about it, maybe this isn't the time to speak about it, but it's almost redundant on the nomination form. Myself, as somebody who nominated a few people, basically you're repeating what you said in number 1 if you've done number 1 properly. Just suggesting you may want to take that out while we're talking about it.
I agree, Brian. I felt that as well with nominating in the past. So maybe what we can do, Shelley, is it's a review of the matrix and scoring, and then also the current application questions and anything else that we would recommend as a committee for revising in the future. Paul, go ahead.
I also like the fact that we've got these nominations a week out and we could mull over them and read them rather than rush into a meeting and try and figure it all out in 3 or 4 or 5 hours. So I thought that was a good idea.
Yes, you're getting heads nodding everywhere for that. And Joanne, I don't want to assume that you're nodding your head, but did you have any thoughts on Paul's comments?
No, I think they stand out. That it's being well looked into, and I think it's something that should be followed through on. And Brian had a good point too on those questions.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. Okay. Any further comments, again, questions, thoughts? All right, so I will call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
And then there are none opposed, so that carries as well. Okay, item number 8 is informational items. We have no informational items, which brings us down to the bottom of our agenda. We are very efficient. Our adjournment. So may I have a motion to adjourn? That was moved by Paul, and may I have a seconder?
Joanne.
Seconded by Diane. All those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And there are none opposed, so that carries. And it is now 11:35 and our meeting is concluded. Thank you so much, everyone. Linda, did I miss